Hey guys, quick story time. Last week I was taking a trip up to Boston, and as I was sitting in the bus, I noticed that... Sorry, did that throw you off? Did that sound odd? The fact that I said I was sitting in the bus? I mean, if you're a native English speaker, you likely noticed that almost immediately without even trying. It's not like I primed you to look out for mistakes as I was speaking or anything. But why? Why did that sound off? Oh, well, it's because you don't sit in a bus, you sit on a bus. But again, why? You'd have no issue if I said I was sitting in a car. Oh, well, it's because you sit on large vehicles that you board, like a train, a plane, or a bus. But again, why does that matter? It's not like you didn't understand me, so why are we calling that a mistake? And more importantly, why did that feel wrong? I often hear people say that the sole purpose of language is to communicate, that so long as you were understood, then you were speaking correctly. Now, while I definitely appreciate this sentiment, you might be surprised to learn that I don't actually agree. Now, of course, comprehension is an important part of language, but it's by no means the only aspect. You see, in my view, the purpose of language is not just to communicate ideas, but to communicate belonging. Let's say you're talking to your grandmother who's showing you a video that a friend sent her that you just have to watch, and she says, "Oh, you just have to see this video that I saw in my phone last week." Now, despite the fact that her meaning was entirely understood, we would still call that incorrect. But I think the fact that she said she saw something in her phone actually communicates a lot more information than had she not made any mistake at all. You see, doing that indicates that your grandmother isn't fluent, so to speak, when it comes to technology. That in this realm, she may be a bit of an outsider. Meaning, there's a reason "in my phone" feels like a mistake. It's because that feeling clues you in on who she is. This is, to me, an unquestionably important part of language, to subtly convey that we are one and the same. It's why I don't think it's a coincidence that you might feel a little off anytime someone speaks in a way that you are not used to, even if you entirely understood them. Some part of you is going, "Hey, wait a minute. This doesn't feel right." Do you remember 2 years ago when a white influencer had purchased tickets for a Harry Styles concert, but StubHub had never actually emailed them to her? How she called StubHub, who then told her that they could only give her balcony tickets, at which point she said,
"No, I finna be in the pit."
Now, she was clowned on by just about every single corner of the internet for this, but not just because she was a white girl saying finna. You see, African American Vernacular English, or AAVE, will often drop linking verbs like is and are, turning she's crazy into she crazy, or we're out into we out. But importantly, AAVE will not drop that linking verb if it follows the first person pronoun I. I'm happy will never be I happy. That will sound like caveman speak to a native AAVE speaker just as much as it would to literally anyone else. And so too will I finna. If you actually listen to native AAVE speakers using finna, it's always I'm finna.
Y'all in the party, well, I'm finna smash. I'm finna crash.
I'm finna go back to jail.
Shoot, I'm finna learn this week.
So by saying "I finna be in the pit," she was revealing herself to be an outsider to a subculture that she was trying to pass off as her own. She just assumed that AAVE dropped linking verbs everywhere, which any native speaker immediately knew was wrong. Had she said "I'm finna" instead of "I finna," I don't think she would have gotten nearly as much attention. To say that she was made fun of just because she's a white girl using finna just isn't true. It's specifically how she used it. White celebrities like Angus Cloud and Eminem never got clowned on for using finna because it's clear that while they might not be black, that they're not outsiders either.
We out here, you know what I'm saying? They finna play some games, you know what I'm saying? I like
In AA with an AK melee, finna set it like a play date, better vacate, retreat.
Think that's just because they're men? Or because they're famous? That's not the case either. Listen to the woman in this TikTok here, who is by no means a celebrity.
If I told you I stopped fucking with him and you see us out to eat, you see his name pop on my motherfucking phone, whoop-de-fucking-do, bitch.
You'll notice she doesn't sound like what you'd expect a white woman to sound like. But the comments on this video are not lambasting her for imitating a black woman. Instead, they're filled with comments from black women saying things like, "I hear my sister, but see my coworker." They're surprised, they find it funny, sure, but they're not offended. It's clear to them that this is just how she speaks. None of these linguistic differences center on comprehension. There should be no reason from a comprehension standpoint to find issue with Of course language isn't just about understanding the meaning of your message, because that's not all we use language for. We also use language to communicate camaraderie. That's literally why
Say lot word when few word do trick.
these linguistic variations are by no means just regional. I mean, obviously different generations will have different slangs, accents, and speech patterns, but different professions can have them too. If your doctor asked you during your yearly physical, how often do you go poo-poo, you'd likely find it very strange. You might even think, this guy's a doctor? Different hobbies can also breed different speech. Whenever I tell people that I used to ride my bike really long distances, I'll know whether or not they're also interested in pedal-operated machinery just on whether or not they call me a biker or a cyclist. Even specific corners of the internet will experience this. I remember in high school seeing a classmate of mine get made fun of because he said, "Don't forget to be awesome." To them, it seemed silly, lame, worthy of ridicule. But to me, it communicated that we had something in common. Now, the linguistic variations surrounding professions actually have their own name. Jargon. The example with the doctor asking about your poo-poo sounds off because you'd expect your doctor to use medical jargon, to ask you about loose stool and not goopy poopy. And as confusing as medical jargon can be to non-medical civilians, it helps patients take their doctors seriously. Literally, he sounds like he knows what he's talking about. Now, my favorite example of professional jargon has to be corporate jargon, the set of words and phrases that we associate with corporate America. Hey team, thanks for a robust discussion on these agenda items. I think we'll need to put a pin in this until we can check with all the relevant stakeholders and get their feedback. And then we can circle up and present to leadership to establish whether or not we can maintain momentum on these deliverables for Q1. Now, these terms have become so commonplace that they seem to transcend any particular industry. And interestingly, people will often complain that corporate jargon actually confuses your intended meaning, making it more difficult to understand you, not less. If the purpose of language was just to be understood, why wouldn't we just speak normally? Here, we make a conscious choice to sacrifice mutual intelligibility for language's other purpose. By using this jargon, you're communicating to people your position, specifically your experience. You're letting those on your team's call know that you are not new here. And people will start using this jargon very quickly because they too want to sound like that they have some level of seniority. To say that language's sole purpose is to communicate information undersells its true wonder. Language can express who your community is, what your interests are, what you're familiar with. Even the things you dislike can be conveyed by what kind of words you use. I mean, there's a big difference between a pig and a swine, between a doggy and a mutt. Is a style old and outdated, or is it vintage? If a neighborhood was urban, densely populated, and mostly low income, what would you call it? Would you call it the inner city? Or would you call it the ghetto? Or would you not call it anything at all and just describe it, as I just did? The answer to that question conveys something about who you are. Language doesn't just communicate ideas. Language communicates you. Of course, you already knew this, that the way you speak communicates something about you. It's why the way you speak to your friends isn't the same way you speak to your parents, or your boss, or complete strangers. You switch the specific dialect you use to better match the situation you're in, or to better control the kind of image that you give off. In linguistics, this kind of control is called code switching. It is something we all do to some extent in a variety of ways. My favorite example of code switching has to be this moment in Euphoria, where Fez is talking to Lexi about an upcoming play that she's writing.
Everybody gets their feelings hurt, you know. Some people need to get their feelings hurt sometimes.
Did you notice that? They feelings, a non-standard grammatical deviation, turned into their feelings in the very next sentence. Fez code switched in the exact same conversation while talking to the exact same person. Absolutely nothing changed about the situation he was in, so why did he code switch? Well, to me, it seems like he's trying to communicate a certain level of sincerity. He wants her to take what he's saying earnestly, so he switches to a grammatical structure that he knows she is more used to. Remember, the name of the game is social cohesion. You want to speak in such a way that the people you're speaking to feel as if you're one in the same. A strong social network increases your chances of survival in a world where support systems are necessary, especially if the group that you're speaking to holds more power than you do. This is why many Black Americans will develop a sort of bilingualism, or more appropriately, bidialectism, as they switch between AAVE and ASE, American Standard English. they've learned that they have to if they want to be taken seriously in a job interview or in a classroom.
Yes, and the media were clearly very, or a lot of them, very hostile the first day and more forgiving after she'd been coached to say things like, sir, and the second day.
Code switching literally is a survival instinct. Now remember, everybody code switches to some extent or another. This is something that we all have an innate instinct to do, likely because it served an evolutionary purpose. Being an effective code switcher meant you could assimilate into multiple different groups, bettering your chances of survival. I wouldn't be surprised if there was an evolutionary advantage to being able to immediately identify speech that is just slightly unfamiliar to you. Flagging your grandmother saying, "in my phone," for example. I mean, back when human beings were much more local, we would expect people from even just neighboring tribes and villages to have varying grammatical structures. Hearing someone speak in a way that you were not used to would let you know that they were not from here. Now, of course, it doesn't have to literally be a byproduct of evolution for this to occur. We would expect varying speech patterns and accents across the world from just the linguistic variation of genetic drift. I mean, the only way that wouldn't happen would be if every single language on the planet evolved in the exact same way, which, statistically speaking, would be impossible. But still, it makes sense that this would be advantageous in a time when demonstrating that you were a part of the social in-group would benefit the group's survival. I mean, not to reference Inglourious Basterds again, but is that not literally this moment? A small regional difference in communication that immediately alerted a member of the in-group that you did not belong. Something that, while still being perfectly understood, showed that you were an outsider. Had he not noticed this, would not more of his community been at risk? This story isn't anything new. We can see examples of this exact same plot device being used as far back as the Hebrew Bible. In the book of Judges, after the tribe of Ephraim had suffered a military defeat by the tribe of Gilead, the surviving Ephraimites tried escaping across the Jordan River. However, they were stopped by the Gileadites who had just defeated them. To identify them, the Gileadites would ask them pronounce this word, the Hebrew word for an ear of corn, which the Gileadites pronounced as shibolet, but the Ephraimite dialect resulted in pronunciation that sounded more like sibolet, identifying them immediately. It's from this story that we get the word shibboleth, a small aspect of a language, usually just a word, phrase, or pronunciation, that helps distinguish one group from another. Now, shibboleths are everywhere. You probably don't realize just how often a single word has revealed you to be a foreigner. For example, you likely call this town Boise, but the locals know it as Boise. Call this Pennsylvania city Lancaster and not Lancaster, and everybody will know you're a tourist. Massachusetts has 100 of these. Peabody?
Peabody.
Quincy?
Quincy's.
Worcester?
Worcester.
Gloucester?
Gloucester.
Leicester?
Leicester.
But calling this town Doster will reveal you to be a newly arrived foreigner who mistakenly thinks they've got the hang of things, because this one is indeed just
Dorchester.
Now, shibboleths are in no way restricted to just small towns and cities that you've never heard of. Take Detroit, which many locals will pronounce as Detroit.
Is it Detroit for you or Detroit?
It's Detroit for me because I'm from Detroit.
Entire states like Colorado and Nevada are mispronounced by the rest of the country as Colorado and Nevada. Shibboleths, of course, do not just have to center around pronunciation. As a Long Island native, if you tell me that you live in Long Island, I'll know that you did not grow up on Long Island. They don't need to be connected to regions either. Hopper from Stranger Things routinely exposes that he is an outsider with regards to wealth and fine dining, as he keeps mispronouncing the red wine Chianti as Chianti. The reverse effect happens in A Game of Thrones, when Arya, trying to pose as a low-born girl, routinely says "my lord," a noble-born pronunciation.
My lord. Low-born girls say my lord, not my lord. If you're going to pose as a commoner, you should do it properly.
Truth be told, every single aspect of your language is a shibboleth. That's all language is. A giant collection of shibboleths stacked on top of each other in a trench coat, each one revealing a different aspect of who you are, giving you 100 different opportunities to communicate that you belong, but also 100 different opportunities to reveal that you don't. So maybe this linguistic drift isn't a byproduct of evolution, but perhaps the ability to immediately identify imperceptibly small differences in communication is. It gives you the ability to determine if someone is from your community. It lets you know that you have something in common. It's no coincidence that the etymology of all three of those words traces back to the exact same root. I do wonder if this is why a lot of people will say they feel genuine discomfort anytime they hear someone speak in a way that they are not used to, even if it's such minor things like a single pronunciation. Their brain is literally ringing alarm bells in their head going, warning, warning, this is an intruder. And I don't think there's any harm in just recognizing that feeling, but you should also recognize those alarm bells for what they are. Just bells. Only noise. Nothing more. The truth is, we live in a hyper-connected world. We're exposed to so many more people than we would be just 100 years ago. Your best friend grew up on the other side of the country. Your roommate's from overseas. Your new coworker only just moved from their sleepy Midwestern town to your bustling and vibrant city. So odds are those alarm bells are going to ring much more often as we meet more and more people from varying communities, countries, and lifestyles. But those alarm bells no longer communicate any sincere danger. If anything, these bells now communicate an opportunity to learn something about the person that you're speaking to. Our brains just don't see it that way, simply because we've learned to connect with each other too fast for our brains to keep up. And when you're speaking to someone and you suddenly hear these bells, try to remember that they're probably hearing them too. You will sound like an outsider to them just as much as they will to you. So when this inevitably happens, when you feel this initial pang of linguistic discomfort, try to remember that all that discomfort is just your prehistoric brain trying to warn you for a world that you no longer live in.